My name is Wendy Chandler. I'm 38 years old. For 14 years, I've been a hospice nurse in Marion, Ohio. I sit with the dying when the rest of the world looks away. I tell families what the next few hours will hold. I am steady. I am the one who stays in the room. 3 weeks before Christmas, I was standing in a hospice hallway in my scrubs when my phone buzzed. The message was from my sister, Dana. It was short, polished, and cruel. You're not welcome at Christmas. It's only for parents now. My family had voted on me the way a town votes on a zoning variance. Nobody called. Nobody asked. I read it twice, slid the phone into my pocket, and finished my shift because that's what nurses do. Then I drove home, sat at my little kitchen table, and smiled a smile my sister would have found worrying if she'd seen it. I did not beg. I did not argue. I opened my laptop and booked a balcony suite on a luxury cruise to the Caribbean, sailing straight through Christmas Day. But the cruise isn't the story. What my family did when the photos went up, and what I learned they'd been planning behind my back for weeks, is the part one still can't tell without my hands going still. To understand that text, you need to know my days. I spend my afternoons with patients like Ruth Hastard, an 81-year-old retired math teacher with a tongue like a paring knife. No husband, no children, a bookshelf organized by grudge. The first week I met her, she looked me up and down and said, "You have caretaker posture. Shoulders like a coat hanger everybody uses." I liked her immediately. Ruth did crossword puzzles in ink and graded my small talk like homework. One afternoon, she asked who took care of me at Christmas. I laughed and fluffed her pillow, changing the subject, the classic caretaker dodge. She let it go that day. She wouldn't always. Weeks later, in that same room, Ruth would say the one sentence that ended up saving my life. I mean that with a nurse's precision, not a poet's. But first, you need to meet my family. You can't understand what they took from me until you see everything I'd been handing them for years. My mother, Margaret, is 67, widowed for 6 years, and the backbone of the women's circle at First Lutheran. My brother, Grant, is 41, an insurance engineer in Columbus. His wife, Brooke, runs the PDA like a small navy. My sister, Dana, is 34, and she has 3 kids, Ava, Cole, and little June. And then there's the lake house. My dad built it himself on Kelly's Island. A low gray cottage on Lake Erie with a porch facing the water. Every Christmas of my life happened in that house. I'm the one who kept it running. I put up the tree. I baked the ham. I bought the stocking gifts marked from Santa so Dana could sleep in. When Mom's knees gave out, I drove her to the island with the good tablecloth folded on my lap like a flag. Last year's Christmas card was a photo of the 5 grandkids on that porch. No adults. Just the kids, the lake, and the words, the Chandler family. I held that card and noticed something small and cold. I wasn't in the picture. Neither was anyone who couldn't reproduce. Nobody thought that was strange. I told myself it was sweet. That's the thing about a family like mine. The eviction doesn't start with a text. It starts with a Christmas card everyone says is adorable. I haven't told many people this, but I got married at 29 to a good man named Aaron. From 31 to 34, we went through 3 rounds of IVF. 3 Decembers in a row, I sat in a clinic parking lot listening to a nurse, someone with my own job, my own steady voice, tell me it hadn't worked. The marriage didn't survive the 3rd one. We didn't cheat, we just ran out of language. He remarried. Most days, I'm glad for him. What survived was a savings account I'd opened during the 1st round, labeled someday. By the time the divorce was final, it held $9,400. I couldn't touch it, couldn't close it. It just sat there, a nursery with the lights off. And so, I became the family's fixer. Every school pickup Dana couldn't make, every airport run, every holiday hosted, wrapped, cooked, and cleaned. If I couldn't give the family children, I would pay my dues some other way. Nobody said it out loud. They didn't have to. I'd written the contract myself and signed it alone. But there was one more payment, bigger than all the rest, that nobody in that group chat knew about. One thing I'd been quietly doing for 6 years that made what happened next almost funny. Almost. December 3rd, 4:40 p.m. I was charting outside a patient's room when the group chat, Chandler Christmas, with a little tree emoji lit up. Dana's message was long, drafted, and polished. She wrote that the lake house felt chaotic last year, that the kids' magic had to come first, and that after talking it over, they decided to try something new. Christmas at the lake house is just for the parents and kids this year. And then, in its own little bubble, it's only for parents now. She added a heart. She added, "You understand, right? You're the cool aunt. We'll do lunch in January." Lunch in January. 35 Christmases in that house, and I'd been rescheduled like a dental cleaning. I watched the reactions roll in. Grant gave it a thumbs up. Brooke posted a gif of Santa clapping. And my mother, whose porch lights I hang every November, whose medication list lives in my purse, said nothing. In my family, silence is a vote. I typed a reply and deleted it. Typed another, deleted that. For drafts, each smaller than the last, until there was nothing left. I put the phone away and went back to check a stranger's morphine pump. A stranger whose family had driven 400 miles to be with her. Nurses notice everything. It's a curse. I wish I could tell you I went scorched earth that night. I didn't. I negotiated. The next evening, I called Dana. I hate telling this part because you'll hear a grown woman bidding on a folding chair. I offered to cook the whole dinner and leave before it was served. I offered to stay at a motel and slip in Christmas morning to watch the kids open their stockings, the stockings I fill, though I didn't say that. I heard myself getting smaller with every offer. Dana was sweet the entire time. "It's not personal," she said in the voice she uses on June. "It confuses the kids' magic having extra adults hovering." Extra adults. I want you to sit with that phrase. 38 years old, and I'd just been reclassified as surplus furniture. Then she added, "Honestly, we all talked about it, and everyone agreed it's healthier." Everyone agreed? When did everyone agree, Dana? A pause. The exact pause a nurse hears when a family member is about to lie about how a fall happened. "It came up organically," she said. "In my family, nothing comes up organically except cancer." I said goodnight, hung up, and stood in my kitchen doing the thing I do at work, reading the chart. There had been a meeting about me. I just couldn't see the room yet. On Saturday, I drove to Mom's with a casserole. In the Midwest, you can't confront anyone without a covered dish. Mom was addressing Christmas cards. This year's card was the grandkids again. She wouldn't hold my eyes. "Don't make waves, honey. It's one Christmas." That's what people say when it isn't theirs. I asked her if she'd been in the room when the new rule was invented. She straightened the cards. "It's what's best for the children," which is the church version of pleading the fifth. Then I saw it. On her counter, next to her open mail, was a bank statement. A line item I knew better than my own pulse. I looked away fast, 6 years of habit. And that was the part of the story I'd been keeping even from myself. 6 years ago, my dad died of a heart attack at 63. After the funeral, Mom sat me down and showed me a folder. Dad had taken a home equity loan against the lake house. With his pension gone, she couldn't cover the payments, the taxes, and the insurance. The house was maybe 14 months from being sold out from under us. She cried into a dish towel and asked me for 2 things, help and secrecy. If your brother and sister find out the house isn't free and clear, it changes how they see your father. I was 32. Still in the middle of the IVF shots, already suspecting how that story would end. I had no children to save for, a steady paycheck, and a hole in my chest exactly the size of being needed. Of course, I said yes. $600 a month. Autopay. Loan, taxes, insurance. 72 payments and counting. More than $40,000 over 6 years, out of a nurse's salary, in perfect secret. While Grant believed the house was paid off and Dana planned menus for it. So when my sister said Christmas was only for parents now, here was the arithmetic nobody else could do. I was banned from the only house in the family that had my name on the bills. The room where the meeting happened found me by accident. 9 days after the text, my niece Ella called me on video to show me her science fair volcano. "Mid-eruption," she said. "Mom said you're not coming since Halloween." "Did you really tell Grandma Christmas is dumb now?" "Since Halloween?" It was December 12th. Halloween was 6 weeks back. Which meant that all through November, while I hung Mom's porch lights, while I drove her to her cardiology checkup, while I picked up Ava and Cole from school, there had been a second chat. All of them deciding I was clutter. My mother had known for 6 weeks. She'd let me climb her ladder, check her heart, and say nothing. I'd assumed her silence was cowardice. It wasn't. It was policy. That night, I went into work early. Ruth took one look at me and put down her crossword. "Sit," she said. "You're leaking." That was her word for feelings. So I sat and told her the truth. The text, the second chat, the 6 weeks. Ruth listened like a teacher monitoring an exam. Then she told me her own story. 50 years of teaching other people's children. Paying for braces, college textbooks, hosting Thanksgiving for 30 years. Then her hip went. She couldn't host, couldn't drive, couldn't be useful. "Count the visitors, Wendy," she said. "I spent my whole life buying my seat at their table. Turns out I was only ever renting." She turned her teacup a quarter turn. "The moment you can't pay, the chair's gone. And they act like it was never there." Then she looked at me, her voice going gentle. "Don't wait until this bed to learn arithmetic, girl. You're the best math I've seen in years, and you're doing it for people who round you down." I drove home at midnight with something enormous moving under my ribs. I opened my laptop. I wasn't looking for a speech, I was looking for an exit. A travel ad had been following me around the internet. A woman my age, alone at a ship's rail. I clicked. 7 nights, Eastern Caribbean, sailing December 23rd. 1 balcony suite left. 5,000. I sat there looking at the payment screen and did the thing that still makes my throat tight. I logged into my savings and pointed the transfer at the account labeled someday. 9,400 that had been waiting for a child who was never coming. Someday, it turns out, has a date if you're brave enough to pick one. I picked December 23rd. I paid in full. I renamed the account now. I kept the announcement small. 2 lines in the family thread 5 days before I flew, confirmed. "I'll be away for the holidays. Enjoy the lake house." Dana replied in under a minute. "Away where?" Brooke tried the concerned angle. "Is everything okay?" This seems sudden. Sudden? They'd had a planning chat about my absence since Halloween. I'd simply agreed faster than scheduled. Then Mom called. She didn't ask where I was going or if I was hurt. She said, "People will ask where you are, honey." What am I supposed to tell them? The whole engine of my family idling in one sentence. Not her daughter alone in December. The optics. I looked out at a plastic snowman glowing in the cold. "Tell them the truth, Mom. Tell them I wasn't invited." Silence. "Then, that's not fair, Wendy." "Nobody said you weren't." She stopped. We both knew the next word was welcome. I told her I loved her, which is the inconvenient part of the story, and hung up. December 23rd, Fort Lauderdale. 81 degrees. The heat hit me like forgiveness. The ship was absurd, 14 decks of lit-up nonsense. My suite had a balcony wide enough for 2 loungers. Champagne on ice with a card, "Welcome aboard. We're glad you're here." I read it twice. Glad you're here. It rhymed with somewhere. I sailed at 4 p.m. I stayed at the rail and watched Florida slide backward. The cranes, the condos, my family shrinking to a line, then a smudge, then gone. Christmas Eve was hard. Garlands, carols, families in matching pajamas. I stood at the atrium rail in my new white sundress. Then a voice beside me said, "First holiday alone? You've got the face." Her name was Nadia, an anesthesiologist from Atlanta. "My ex kept the in-laws," she said. "Best settlement I ever negotiated." We closed down the late seating with 2 widows from Michigan and a retired tugboat captain who'd cruised alone for 9 years. He called it his annual custody of myself. At midnight, I stood on my balcony in the warm, dark ocean hissing along the hull. I checked my phone out of habit. Full signal. Not one message from my mother, brother, or sister. That silence, which was supposed to punish me, is what made the next morning so easy. Christmas morning, the sea was a shade of blue that looks rude to describe to people in Ohio. Nadia met me on the top deck with 2 mimosas. She took my phone. "Stand at the rail. You're going to want to remember being this free." The pictures she took are my favorites. Me laughing with my head back. Me barefoot with my coffee. The water impossibly gold behind me. One woman, one horizon. Nobody needing anything from her. I sat with my thumb over the post button. It wasn't revenge. If it had been revenge, I'd have written something surgical. What I finally typed was, "Merry Christmas from someone who finally spent it exactly where she was wanted." No names, no story, no tags. Up it went in my unremarkable Facebook where half of Marion lives. I put the phone face down and went to breakfast. I genuinely believed I had posted a photograph of a woman on vacation. By the time we docked in San Juan, there were 41 messages. The first flood was warm. Coworkers, friends, strangers. Good for you. You deserve every minute. The second flood was my family. Dana, wow, real classy on Christmas. Then, you couldn't give us one holiday without making it about you. Brooke, your mother sat through Christmas Eve service getting asked why her daughter is on a boat. You've embarrassed her. Not one message asked if I was okay. They only asked what I was going to do next. Grant called that evening, pre-oiled with reason. Nobody's mad. But you've made your point. Take the posts down. Maybe put up an apology. You're making Mom look bad. I watched the harbor lights. Walk me through it, Grant. It's a photo of me drinking coffee. Which part is the attack? He exhaled. You know exactly what you're doing. Everyone can see you're fine. And they all know you weren't invited, so it looks he stopped. There was no way through that sentence that didn't convict somebody. It looks like what it is, Grant. That's the problem. But the message that broke me that week wasn't from my family. It came at 6 a.m., docked at St. Thomas, from my coworker Denise. Ruth had died on Christmas night. In her sleep, no pain. Exactly the exit Ruth would have graded highest. Denise sent a photo of an envelope Ruth had left. Inside was a get well card Ruth hated sympathy cards, covered in daisies. In shaky cursive, one line, "Sit down at your own table, girl." I looked at that sentence for a long time. Then I looked at my bag, where the brass key to the lake house rode in the zip pocket. I'd told myself I brought it out of habit. Sitting there with Ruth's handwriting, I finally admitted the truth. I hadn't brought the key so I could let myself back in. I'd brought it because I was deciding whether to give it back. Meanwhile, my photos had grown legs. A woman from my church shared the deck picture into a Facebook group called Solo by the Sea. 40,000 members. Hundreds of comments. Spent last Christmas in my car crying. My family does immediate family only now. Nobody tells you the table you set your whole life can be taken away in one text. I had thought what happened to me was a private malfunction. It was a pattern. That night, Dana called. She was crying. You post one photo and the whole world claps for you. I haven't slept a full night in 8 years. Being their mom is the only thing I have. I stood there holding that sentence, feeling the near miss of really seeing my sister. Then she pulled the door shut. So take the posts down, please. You've made your point. I gave her the answer I'd never said plainly in 38 years. No. The no went through my family like a stone through a greenhouse. I was added to a new group thread. No emoji. Just a committee-written message drafted by Brooke and sanded down by Grant. The terms: delete the posts. Apologize to Dana. Apologize to Mom in person. And if I declined, the family would reconsider your involvement in family matters going forward, including Mom's affairs. Mom's affairs. Translation: the medication list in my purse, the cardiology appointments on my calendar, the pill box I fill every Sunday night. They were threatening to fire me from the job none of them had ever offered to take. They thought my usefulness was their leverage. They thought they were taking something from me. They had no idea what I'd been carrying. I didn't answer the committee that night. I sat on my balcony with 2 objects. Object 1, my phone, open to my banking app, where the autopay stood loaded for the first of the month. $600. The machine that kept the porch lights on at a house I was no longer welcome in. Object 2, the brass key, catching the deck lights. 22 years on my ring. A crooked C cut by a man who believed his daughter should always be able to let herself in. I thought about Ruth's arithmetic. Buying, renting, the chair that vanishes. If I stop paying, Ruth was right, it was never mine. If I keep paying, I'm just funding a Christmas I'm banned from forever and calling it love. There was no third option. I'd been squinting for one for 6 years. At 6 a.m., the phone rang. Grant. Mom fell. He delivered it with the grim satisfaction of a man arriving with a warrant. This is what happens, Wendy. This is exactly what happens when you abandon this family. I triaged. Is she conscious? Did she hit her head? He faltered. Drama doesn't like intake questions. I called Mom directly. She answered, voice shaky but herself. Left wrist swollen. A bad sprain. Home before midnight. I organized a meal train with Carol from next door and a follow-up with her doctor. Real care. The kind I'm licensed in. Then Grant's next message landed. Fly home today. Delete everything. Apologize to Dana. Do that and Mom says you're welcome at New Year's. All of it forgotten. This is your last chance to be part of this family. Forgotten. I read the offer again in the St. Martin Sun. Not we're sorry. Not we miss you. All of it forgotten. Meaning the photos gone, the questions hushed, and me back in my chair as if none of it had happened. The price of readmission was the disappearance of the evidence. And the evidence was me happy. It wasn't an invitation. It was the old contract, retyped with a Christmas bow. I found Nadia at the coffee bar. She asked 2 questions. If she were your patient's family, what would you call that message? Leverage, I said. And what do you tell families who use leverage on the people taking care of them? I heard my own voice answer with a sentence I'd said 100 times. Love doesn't invoice. I walked back to my suite and did 3 things. First, I answered Grant. Mom was safe, splinted, and fed. Carol and I had the logistics handled. I'd call every morning at 8 because I was done performing care but would never be done providing it. The photos stay up. There is nothing in them but me happy. If that's a scandal, the scandal isn't mine. I typed the sentence I'd been carrying since December. Dana said Christmas is only for parents now. Okay, then I'm only for me now. And beneath it, the first of the month arrangement ends today. She knows what that means. Second, I called my bank. Auto pay canceled. Effective immediately. The loan, the taxes, the insurance. 72 payments. 6 years. Over $40,000. Ended in 9 minutes from a deck chair in the Caribbean. Third, I wrote a letter to my mother. Private. No copies. I told her the whole truth. I didn't want $1 back. I wasn't telling the congregation. I set new terms. I will always show up for you as your daughter. I am done showing up as your staff. I signed it, folded it, and set on top of it the brass key with the crooked C. My father cut that key so I could always let myself in. I was finally doing it, just not to the house. Let me tell you what it cost. The moment that auto pay died, the lake house started dying with it. Nobody else can carry $600 a month. Which meant the porch my father built, the dock where I learned to skip stones, the window where every tree I ever decorated stood, sold eventually to strangers. In saving myself, I was signing away the last place on earth that still had him in the walls. Both things were true at once. I let them both be true. I stood at the rail and said, the lease is up. When I powered my phone back on, the family thread had burned through its stages. Outrage, disbelief, and then a strange, sputtering silence once Mom had to explain what I'd been paying. Grant called again, sounding 15. Why didn't you ever tell us? Because she asked me not to, I said. And because I thought paying quietly was what love looked like. We were both wrong. Dana sent a long, defensive message at 2 a.m. Threaded through the middle. I didn't know about the money. I swear. I wrote back once. The truth was theirs to carry now. On December 30th, I mailed my mother the letter with the brass key inside. The clerk asked if the contents were fragile. Very, I said. It'll travel fine. The lake house went up for sale in March. Grant ran the numbers and declined. Dana cried and couldn't. I was done and stayed done and grieved it anyway. You can be certain and sad at the same time. Aunt Susan stopped speaking to me, informing the family I'd put money over blood. Dana never apologized. What she did instead was start sending me photos of the kids again in late January. June in her snow boots on the wrong feet. I answered warmly and said nothing else. That is where my sister and I live now. A small country, but a real one with a border we both respect. In late February, Mom knocked on my apartment door holding her old cookie tin. She'd never been inside my apartment before. She looked small and brave. She didn't apologize. She said, "Your father gave you that key so you could always let yourself in." I've been keeping it in my coat pocket to remind me it was never the house that needed to stay open. It was me. I forgot the house was never the point. Then she asked, as a guest, if she could stay for supper. We ate scrambled eggs and cookies at my two-chair table. She told me a story about Dad getting the porch beams wrong the first time. We laughed. Neither of us mentioned Christmas. This Christmas, 1 year almost to the day after a text message reclassified me as furniture, my apartment held more people than chairs. Denise and 2 others from hospice. Carol, who brought a ham. 2 women from Solo by the Sea. 1 chair we set on purpose with a full place setting and no name on it. House rule. Whoever needs it next year, it's theirs. At 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. It was Mom with the blue tin and June on her hip. Dana waved from the car. Mom looked down the length of my crowded, mismatched, glorious table and asked where I wanted her. Anywhere, I said. At my table, there is no only. If you're here, you're family. We lit the candles. Someone's pager went off and we all laughed. In March, I'm sailing again. 5 nights, Western route. Not to prove anything. Proof was last year. This one's just because the ocean and I have a standing appointment. If you take one thing from my story, take this. A seat you have to keep paying for was never yours. The only table that's truly yours is the one where love doesn't come with an invoice. That's my story. 1 text, 1 cabin with an ocean view, and 1 brass key I finally gave back. If someone has ever made you pay rent for a place in their heart, maybe it's time to read your own lease.